Madam Speaker. That's what victims expect.
I do want to apologize to the member for Sandwich Gulf Islands. Unfortunately, I didn't see her until I had recognized somebody else, but there will be an opportunity for questions and comments after question period on this issue. Statements by members, déclaration des députés, l'honorable député, the Honourable Joanna Louvain.
Madam Speaker, over the weekend, CBC reported that this will be Leo Gerard's last term as president of the United Steelworkers. As a member of the union and of the All-Party Steel Caucus, I rise to congratulate Leo on his extensive service to steelworkers across North America, including those at Evraz and other workplaces in Regina. Leo distinguished himself as one of a very few Canadians to be elected as president of an international union. With his leadership, the United Steelworkers have been steadfast in advocating for a Canadian exemption from U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs. All Canadians appreciate such cross-border solidarity as we push to maintain fair and balanced trade with our neighbours. I invite all members of the House to join me in congratulating Leo.
The
Honourable Member for Sudbury. Thank you, Madam Speaker. A year ago, I rose in this House to pay tribute to a great historian and professor. Today, I rise to recognize him once again and to pay tribute to him on behalf of the Franco-Ontarian community. He was a proud Ontarian who died this weekend, and Professor Gervais was a promoter of economic development for Francophones in Ontario. He taught young students from all across the community to become fully involved in their communities and in their country. During a whole series of events, he participated, and he had a long list of awards and distinctions as well. The pride in Francophone Ontarians is in all of us, and the symbols of Franco-Ontarian culture represent who we are and where we are going. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Provencher.
Mr. Speaker, it was recently learned that the Liberal government approved federal funding through the Canada Summer Jobs Program for an organization that is currently suspended by the Canada Revenue Agency for potentially funding terrorism. Wow. Federal charities regulators have flagged concerns that this organization had provided resources that may have been used for armed militancy. Meanwhile, the discriminatory Liberals' values test meant that hundreds of legitimate charities running soup kitchens or children's day camps across Canada had to sign a statement supporting Liberal Party values as a condition of receiving federal funding. Support of terrorism or support of children's day camps? It's really not a difficult issue, or at least it shouldn't be. But if the Liberal government's moral compass weren't so out of whack, it wouldn't be. Mr. Speaker, it's time for the Liberals to put aside their ideology, rescind their Liberals' values test, and drop the attestation.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent.
We celebrate Women's History Month. It is a time to honour the women and girls who have made a lasting impact as pioneers, paving the way for future generations of trailblazers, leaders, and innovators. Bien qu'il soit important.
It's important to acknowledge the success stories of extraordinary women who made a lasting impact on our society. We also need to reflect on the obstacles and challenges that women and girls still face today. These obstacles may not be as obvious as they once were, but they need to be understood, addressed, and overcome if gender equality is to become a reality in Canada and in the world.
As a member on the Standing Committee of the Standards of Women, and as a young woman myself, I encourage all women and girls to reach their full potential and to make a lasting impact in our society. This month and every month, remember to recognize the women around you and their accomplishments, and to use them as a motivation for yourself.
Deputy Daschlega.
Honourable Member for Ashlega. Mr. Speaker, in the last few years, a number of rooming houses serving some of the most vulnerable people in my riding have been evacuated. This has inevitably led to an increase in homelessness. Many people living in the streets are drug users, which further marginalizes and criminalizes them. And so we end up in a vicious cycle where no one wants them to be in the street, but they can't find a new place to live. And people worry that their drug use has a negative impact on public spaces. The war on drugs, such as it is, isn't working. All of our public health experts agree. I'm proud to be a member of a political party that recognizes this situation and that adopted a resolution at its last convention to decriminalize the possession of all drugs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député d'Edmonton.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre.
Speaker, last week we celebrated Small Business Week, during which time Canadians shone a spotlight on entrepreneurship and the ingenuity of local small businesses while recognizing the contribution these businesses make to our communities and to our economy. In Edmonton Centre, we have a number of thriving local businesses, including specialty shops, healthcare service providers, technology-based companies, and nonprofits. Nous avons un gouvernement.
We have a government that proudly supports small and medium-sized businesses and that works hard every day to help small business owners in Canada move forward. We know that when small businesses succeed, our economy thrives.
A few of these businesses, the Columbian, Jobber, Alberta Women's Entrepreneurs, and Tabletop Cafe, to thank them, to learn about their unique challenges, and to say to them directly, thank you to your families and your clients. You make me and all of us very proud.
The honourable member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, like Canadians across this country, my constituents in Battleford's Lloydminster want to feel safe and secure in their communities. But spikes in rural crime rates are causing great concern. This trend is unacceptable. Yet the Prime Minister and the Public Safety Minister are not focused on making our rural communities safer. Instead, they continue to prioritize improving the lives of convicted criminals. Just last week, the Liberals unveiled a plan to end solitary confinement in federal prisons. They have already introduced legislation to make many serious crimes eligible for just a mere fine. They are giving veterans benefits to a convicted cop killer who has never served a day in their life in the military. They paid out a convicted terrorist. And the list goes on and on. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have had enough of these backwards priorities. It is time that these Liberals put the rights of victims and law-abiding Canadians ahead of criminals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. October is Women's History Month. This year's theme is Make an Impact. And I would like to recognize some of the outstanding women who are making a lasting impact in my riding of Scarborough Centre. Women like Cynthia Pistaggio, a nurse at Scarborough General Hospital, who was on the front lines treating patients during the SARS outbreak. Or Joy Spencer of the Rosewood Church of the Nazarene, who helped to mentor young girls on grooming, careers, and physical and emotional well-being. The Villa Karuna Home for Seniors was founded by Indirani Naganthiram to provide seniors with a familiar and comfortable community to call home. And Mary Louise Cook has made it her mission to chronicle the early history of Scarborough and keep our heritage alive with her book, Rambling About Wexford. Thank you to all the women in Scarborough and across Canada who are making an impact. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mission Maxbury Fraser Canyon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Saturday, I was proud to attend 7th annual Walk and Talk Defeat Depression event in Harrison Hot Springs. The Defeat Depression campaign is a national fundraising campaign designed to raise funds in support of their local mental health programs and services. The campaign has grown into a national movement, bringing such needed awareness of mental health issues and fighting mental health stigma. I want to commend the organizers of HoC Harrison Community Services for their hard work putting this together and all the volunteers who help the day run smoothly and those in attendance who share their own stories with us. Let's keep this fight going. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Abbotsford.
This government is failing to enforce its own environmental law. 3 years ago, we were shocked designed its cars to cheat vehicle emission tests. In fact, it was Canada that verified that they were cheating. The U.S. took immediate action to prosecute VW, which was forced to pay $19 billion in penalties and publicly admit that its software was programmed to cheat. The German government has also levied over $2.5 billion in penalties against VW. Meanwhile, here in Canada, crickets. After 3 long years, the only information this Liberal government can give us is that the matter is under investigation. What could possibly still be under investigation when VW has admitted that it cheated Canadians? Why is the minister refusing to use her powers to prosecute and punish VW for its flagrant violation of our Canadian laws? The Liberals talk a big game on the environment, but it's all talk and no action.
The honourable member for Marc-Aurèle-Fortin. Mr. Speaker, on October 11th, I had the chance to participate in the annual gala of the Laval Association of Parents and Friends for Mental Health Well-Being, or ALPABEM. ALPABEM's mission is to support the friends and family of individuals showing clinical symptoms of serious mental illness. They work to provide them with a wide range of services to keep them informed and help them achieve a better quality of life. ALPABEM has been active in my riding of Marc-Aurèle-Fortin for nearly 50 years, and it managed to raise nearly $19,000 during its gala. Thank you to the members of ALPABEM for their daily commitment to their community.
The honourable member for Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate my friend and new mayor-elect of City of Surrey, Doug McCallum, on his election victory this past weekend. In 1999, I had the opportunity to run alongside Mayor McCallum as his team member, and I have seen firsthand his commitment and passion to serving Surrey. I would also like to congratulate the new councillors-elect, Brenda Locke, Jack Hundal, Mandeep Nagra, Doug Alford, Laurie Guerra, Alison Patton, Stephen Pettigrew, and Linda Ennis. I commend all mayoral, council, and school trustee candidates across British Columbia for putting their names and ideas forward to make a positive difference in their respective communities. I, along with my fellow Surrey MPs, look forward to working closely with Mayor McCallum and the council for the betterment of Surrey and to continue to foster a positive relationship between both orders of government.
Honourable member for Lethbridge.
Canadians expect their government to create jobs, to respect their rights and freedoms, to care for veterans, to stand up for victims, and to facilitate an environment of economic prosperity. These are the marks of a responsible and good government. Sadly, the Prime Minister is failing on each of the above points. This government is failing businesses by increasing red tape and taxation. Thousands of jobs are moving south of the border. The Prime Minister sees veterans as nothing more than an expense, and when given the choice to stand up for victims or criminals, he chooses criminals every single time. When it comes to stewarding tax dollars, this government has one goal and one goal only, and that is to reward itself with luxurious vacations, office expansions, and limo rides. And while families are struggling to make ends meet, this government is insisting on driving up the cost of living, even more so by applying a carbon tax. Canadians deserve better, and much better comes in the color blue. In 1 year's time, they'll get a chance to vote for a government that will work for them.
The honourable member for Alfred Pelland. Mr. Speaker, Little Italy in Montreal is a source of pride for everyone in Quebec's Italian community. It's a neighborhood where the colors, smells, and flavors of Italy come together to evoke the dolce vita.
Of Italian descent, Little Italy brings you back to tastes and aromas of your childhood. And you can't say Little Italy without thinking of the pasticceria all'Atti Caserta. Today, I'm proud to take this opportunity to wish them happy 50th anniversary of business. In 1968, Maria Di Meo and Vittorio Calderone founded all'Atti Caserta, a family business focused on giving people the best Italian desserts and service. Cannoli, granita, panettoni, and sfogliatelli are only a few of the temptations to delight your taste buds. Today, their son Marco and his lovely wife Linda carry on the heritage and the special ingredients that make their desserts extra special: passion, love, and the friendliness of services. At the pasticceria, you will find the Italian spirit. Grazie, pasticceria alla Caserta, for those 50 years.
Making us all hungry. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Saturday was election day in British Columbia for municipalities right across the province. And in New Westminster, we're happy to see the re-election of our Social Democratic Mayor, Jonathan Cote. And to note the important diversity we see following the election to Council of Nadine Nakagawa and Chino Das. And New Westminster School Board, where 85% of the elected representatives are now women. In Burnaby, we congratulate my longtime friend Mike Hurley, who is now our elected mayor, and he'll do a great job. And I would be remiss, Mr. Speaker, in not mentioning, of course, the election of former NDP MP Kennedy Stewart as mayor of the city of Vancouver, the largest city in the province, and he will be terrific. So let's join together, Mr. Speaker, to thank all of those candidates for running for elected office. This is the very foundation of our democracy. Thank you to all candidates for putting their names forward and for working to make our communities better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
4 years ago today was a day like no other on Parliament Hill. Just 2 days after Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent was murdered in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu for simply wearing his Canadian Forces uniform, Corporal Nathan Cirillo was shot and killed while guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier at the National War Memorial. When the gunman entered our Parliament with the intent to kill again, he was met with the valour of our Parliamentary Protective Service, the RCMP, and our former Sergeant-at-Arms. The gunfire in these halls, the uncertainty, and the lockdown that followed in this very building deeply impacted those of us who experienced it. But the attack on our democratic institutions was a failure. All of us were in our seats here in this House of Commons, united the very next day to pay tribute to Warrant Officer Vincent, Corporal Cirillo, and all of our heroes who put themselves in harm's way in order to protect us and this place when we needed them most. May God bless them all, lest we forget.
Honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
On today's solemn anniversary, we remember Corporal Cirillo and Warrant Officer Vincent, who both paid the ultimate price for their service to Canada. Nous offrons nos plus...
We offer our sincere condolences to their family and friends, and to everyone affected by these attacks. We also thank the entire Parliamentary Protection Service and the members of the RCMP who put themselves in harm's way that day to protect me and my colleagues and our parliamentary family.
To strike fear, divide us, and break our resolve, but instead we emerged from this tragedy united. Canadians refused to compromise on our most cherished values: democracy, freedom, inclusion, diversity. Shortly after the attack, Corporal Cirillo's friends were once again guarding the National War Memorial, our sacred place to pay tribute. 4 years later, let us continue to thank those who put their lives in harm's way every day to defend us.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to treating terrorists, the priorities of the Liberals are misguided. These people should never have been readmitted to Canada. It is not enough to support our motion. When will the Prime Minister present a plan on how Canada will deal with terrorists, including the abolition of Bill C-75? which would not give authorities the tools they need to bring these people to justice. Mr. Speaker, as everyone knows, providing support to terrorist organizations and traveling to provide them with the support is a crime. We fully support our police services, our intelligence services, so they can do the job to ensure that those who are guilty of such crimes be brought to justice. And of course, our ultimate goal is to protect Canadians and our communities, and this is why we will support the Conservative motion. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Where they support a motion that Conservatives have put forward, and then they do absolutely nothing to take action afterwards. The Prime Minister has had years to deal with this issue, and the fact is that these individuals who have gone and fought with ISIS are coming back and are not facing justice. He has introduced legislation that actually ties the hands of our security officials, and shockingly, he's reduced the penalties for those who are facing terrorist-related charges. When will the Prime Minister finally take real action to protect our communities from these?
Very Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, as all Canadians know, as everyone in this House knows, supporting terrorism is a crime, and traveling to support terrorism is a crime. That's why we have full confidence in our police and intelligence services to ensure that there are consequences for people committing these crimes, and that at the same time we do everything necessary to keep Canadians and our communities safe. That is among the many reasons. Those are among the many reasons why we will be supporting the Conservatives' Opposition Day motion.
Leader of the Opposition.
Well, once again, Mr. Speaker, they're supporting the motion, but they're taking no actual measures to make Canadians safer. They've seen this pattern over and over again. We've also seen another pattern from this Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, and that is refusing to answer simple questions. And I'm going to ask him one about the Mark Norman case. I'm going to assure him that I am not interested in his opinion on the case itself. I'm not asking him to comment on the case. I would like to know if he will make sure that all documents necessary for the defense are made available to Mark Norman's legal team.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member opposite for his question. As he well knows, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on an ongoing court case.
Leader of the Opposition.
See, the Prime Minister is trying to deflect attention on this by trying to pretend as if answering a question about a procedural matter would in some way be commenting on the case. I don't want him to comment on the case. I'm not interested in his opinion on the case. What I am interested in is due process and a fair trial for Mark Norman. Now, he has the power to allow Mark Norman's legal team to have access to the documents that are being requested. It is a yes or no decision. It is his decision alone. Will he make those documents and that evidence available?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are many things the members opposite could be asking questions on. We know that. And they have the right to ask questions on anything they like. But rather ask questions about our success on the USMCA, rather than ask us about the historic low unemployment figures and all the jobs we've created. They continue to ask me about this ongoing court case when it would be inappropriate for me to comment on this ongoing court case.
Order. Members know that there are often times when they hear things in the House they don't like, and from the other side perhaps, maybe occasionally their own side even, that we have to listen in regards to that, and there's a rule against interrupting, so I'd ask members to keep that in mind. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess an independent judicial process and a fair trial for a member of the Canadian Armed Forces isn't important to this Prime Minister. But he asked me to ask him a question on the NAFTA deal. So I'll do that, Mr. Speaker. During this Sunday night of panic, as this government was agreeing to concession after concession after concession to Donald Trump, did the Prime Minister agree? Did the Prime Minister agree to limit Canadian exports of dairy products to third countries so that American farmers could move into that market? Did he agree to those terms?
Mr. Speaker, we are very
proud that we managed to secure access to our most important trading partner, and I want to thank not just people in this House, but people right across the country for standing strong and united in face of this American challenge. That is how we succeeded to move forward in the right way. We also managed to protect supply management. Despite equivocation on the other side of the House, we know that it is a good thing for Canadians, it is a good thing for agricultural industry. That is why we are going to continue to work with our dairy farmers and all supply managed sectors to ensure that they have a bright future, because we believe in them.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Neigette, Témiscouata-les-Basques.
Last night on national television that Canada is on its way to meet its GHG emissions target. He was wrong on so many levels. First, he's the only one saying that we will meet these targets. Even his own environmental commissioners says we will not. Second, at this rate, Canada will miss these targets by at least 66 million tons, which is the equivalent of 14 million cars. And third, these targets were not even his own. To begin with, they were the Conservatives' targets. He admitted he had no intention of changing course in the face of these failures. Why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see that the Conservatives and the NDP still think there's a choice to be made between the environment and the economy. The NDP refused to accept that growing the economy in responsible ways is also a way of ensuring that we meet our targets, whereas the Conservatives don't have any plan to deal with climate change. Indeed, they want to make pollution free again. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, we are moving forward on ensuring that we grow our economy and protect our environment, including fighting climate change and meeting our Paris targets at the same time.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Neigette, Témiscouata-les-Basques. The Prime Minister is skating around the issue and never answering. On Tout le monde en parle, the Prime Minister said that our measures are insufficient. He said that we're not saying that the Liberals have bought a 65-year-old pipeline to keep on pumping out oil. Canada is not doing its part to bring down greenhouse gas emissions. The Liberal plan has shortcomings. When will it finally be made real? Mr. Speaker, we invested $1.5 billion in a plan to protect our oceans. We invested record amounts in green energy projects. We worked with the provinces and municipalities to increase our capacity for growth, sustainable growth. We know that all Canadians want to be part of the solution, and we are the government which not only makes decisions, but which will hit its targets in the first time in the history of our country. We will continue to protect the environment while making sure that we are going to protect the future of Canadians. Canadians expect this, and we will continue to do this. The honourable member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, the explanations from the Saudi government on the disappearance and death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi are becoming even stranger and increasingly defy credulity. We need a real investigation carried out by the UN. Germany moved forward and suspended arms sales from Saudi Arabia and is calling on its allies to follow suit. But the Liberals have done nothing, but they just keep on talking. Are they not ashamed? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we condemn the horrible murder of Jamal Khashoggi. We are deeply concerned by reports on the participation of Saudi forces. We are working closely with our allies, including with our G7 allies in this file, and we repeat that we are calling for an in-depth investigation to find out who carried out this act and to get the perpetrators, to get them brought to justice. The honourable member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie.
Government claims to defend human rights on one hand, and on the other hand, they are one of the world's worst human rights offenders. Saudi Arabia is leading a military coalition that has been accused of war crimes in Yemen, where 12 million people could starve to death due to the armed conflict. So can the government stop the doublespeak and stop arming rogue nations like Saudi Arabia.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we condemn the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The Minister has been having ongoing and active conversation with our allies about next steps and how to work collaboratively. We strongly demand and expect that Canadian exports are used in a way that fully respects human rights. That's why our government is committed to a stronger and more rigorous arms export system and to the Arms Trade Treaty. We have frozen export permits before when we had concerns about their potential misuse, and we will not hesitate to do so again.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of National Defence. Can he tell us on what date former CBC journalist James Cudmore was offered a job in his office as his senior policy advisor?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I don't recall the exact date, but if I can get the exact date, I'll make sure that I'll get it to the member, to Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Thank you all. I'd like to make it easier for the Minister of Defence. Can he tell us if it was before or after November 20th, 2015?
The Honourable Minister of Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have the exact date before me, but I know where the member is going on this path, and I cannot comment any further on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, James Cudmore is the journalist who reported on the Liberal Cabinet's decision to cancel the Davie Shipyard contract in Quebec. A short time later, the Office of the Minister of Defence hired him as a policy advisor. That's a funny coincidence. So let me repeat my colleague's question. When exactly did James Cudmore receive the job offer at the Office of the Minister of Defence?
Mr. Speaker, it would be inappropriate for me or anyone else to comment or speculate on matters related to an ongoing criminal trial. As the members know, committee studies and multiple speakers have found that questions during question period, members should abide by the sub judice convention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. It is understandable that there is something fishy going on. Here are the facts. November 17, Irving sends a letter to 4 Liberal ministers. November 19, the Liberal Cabinet decides to delay the awarding of the Davie contract. November 20, James Cudmore comes out with his report on Davie. January 8, James Cudmore's last day at the CBC, 4 days later. And let me refresh the minister's memory. January 12, James Cudmore's first day in the Office of the Defence Minister. I repeat, when exactly did James Cudmore receive an offer of employment in the Office of the Defence Minister?
Secretary to the Minister of Defence.
Mr. Speaker, as per the House of Commons Compendium of Procedure, quote, members are expected to refrain from discussing matters actively before the courts or under judicial consideration in order to guard those involved in a court action or judicial inquiry from any undue influence. End of quote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, that's an admission that James Cudmore is in the middle of the Mark Norman trial.
That's right.
Now, you know what? In November 2015, CBC journalist James Cudmore broke an exclusive story about the Liberals stopping the construction of a new supply ship for our Navy. 2 months later, that very same journalist has a brand new job. And surprise, surprise, where is he working? Well, he's a senior policy advisor to the Minister of National Defence. Now, when did James Cudmore first discuss his employment with the Minister's office? Was this position created to reward him for his great reporting, or were the Liberals trying to shut Cudmore up before his...
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I will remind the members that it would be inappropriate to comment on an ongoing criminal trial. Peter Van Loan said, it's deemed improper for a member in posing a question or a member in responding to a question to comment on any matter that is sub judice. On this particular occasion, I have to agree with the Honourable Peter Van Loan.
Honourable order. The honourable member for Selkirk, Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, what we're asking about is the employment of a former reporter in the minister's office directly. It has nothing to do about the case, and they can try to hide behind Peter Van Loan's comments when they never once backed down when they were pursuing Mike Duffy. Now, you know, James Cudmore broke all sorts of exclusive stories with CBC and the Canadian Armed Forces, and just 4 days after he finished at CBC, he was working in the minister's office himself. Now, it's clear that the Liberal sources are very comfortable with leaky stories to Cudmore, and so they're very comfortable when they hired him, of course. And now Cudmore's in the middle of this Vice Admiral Mark Norman case. Who's paid for his lawyer?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it is inappropriate to try and prosecute a legal proceeding on the floor of this House of Commons. The rules of the House and the work of the distinguished table in front of us has made it very clear that this line of questioning is inappropriate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Victoria.
Canadians were so disappointed last week when the Liberals said they would not expunge criminal records for simple possession of cannabis. The Liberals claim that they want to break down barriers to jobs, education, housing, and volunteer work, but they won't take the steps necessary to do so. Only by erasing those records can we ensure Canadians don't suffer unjustly for a previous act that, as of last week, is entirely legal. Will the Prime Minister support my bill and expunge those records, or will he move ahead with his half-baked plan?
For Border Security.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Victoria both for his question and for his leadership and advocacy on this issue, and we look forward to continuing to work closely with him on this file. But, Mr. Speaker, having examined the situation very closely, we firmly believe that the appropriate way to deal with these existing records is through a pardon system, to make it affordable and accessible to all Canadians who carry the burden of that record. Mr. Speaker, we believe that this is the right thing to do, and as we have said all along, we will deal with it in the appropriate way at the appropriate time. This is the appropriate way, Mr. Speaker, and a pardon is the appropriate.
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I just returned from Kashechewan, Jagmeet Singh, where the children are deeply concerned about Canada's long history of broken promises. Now, we need to build them a school, but when I talk to the kids, it has to be a proper building, one with a gymnasium and special education facilities. Now, the minister supports the children, but her officials are nickel and diming them. So what's it going to be? Will she commit to work with the community to ensure that these children have what every other child in this country takes for granted, which is a school that is comfy and gives them hope?
Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question and absolutely commit to continuing to work with the community of Kashechewan, including the Chief, to make sure that good solutions are implemented immediately as well as in the long term. He knows that I met with the Chief recently. I'll be meeting with the Chief again tomorrow. We have made an offer for an immediate solution to provide a school, and we will work with them toward a long-term plan.
Honourable member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister continues to hide by saying he cannot comment on Vice Admiral Norman's case. We're not asking him to comment on the details of the case. We are asking him to fulfill the government's responsibility to ensure a fair trial. The government holds critical evidence. We're asking him to simply answer the question: who is he protecting? What is he hiding, and on what date was James Cudmore offered a job in the Minister of National Defence?
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Okay. Once again, Mr. Speaker, it would be inappropriate for me to comment, speculate on matters related to an ongoing criminal trial. As the member should know, committee studies and multiple speaker rulings have found that question period members should abide by the sub judice convention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Beauport, Côte de Beaupré, Île d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, it's very important today, these answers we're getting from the other side. We don't want any details. All we want are for the documents to be made public. Asking for a fair trial is not a political game. On the contrary, it's a fundamental right for every Canadian. So the question is simple. What is the Prime Minister hiding, and who is he protecting? the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Remains inappropriate to prosecute a legal proceeding on the floor of the House of Commons. The rules of the House, the work of the distinguished table in front of us, have made it perfectly clear that this line of questioning is not appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, in his last story as a reporter, James Cudmore described Vice Admiral Mark Norman as brave for being transparent on problems with the shipbuilding process. The date of that last story, December 21st. You know who had a great Christmas, Mr. Speaker? James Cudmore, because a few days later, he was working for the Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. Now, my question is for the Minister of National Defence. Who hired James Cudmore? Was it his office or was it the Prime Minister's office?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Defence has already offered to provide that date. But if we continue with this line of questioning, it was as if we are prosecuting a case on the floor of this House of Commons, and, Mr. Speaker, that would be totally inappropriate. Thank you.
Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the sub judice rule applies to contempt of court. Is that honourable member saying to this Parliament that it would be contempt of a court action to talk about the hiring of a journalist, Mr. Speaker? Because in January of 2016, James Cudmore received a cushy job from the Liberal government, and police were raiding Admiral Mark Norman's home, Mr. Speaker. Will that member, a veteran herself, Mr. Speaker, rise in this House and ensure that a decorated veteran receives due process under law?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
That is exactly what we want, Mr. Speaker. We do not want it to be prosecuted on the floor of the House of Commons, and therefore that line of questioning remains inappropriate. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Jonquière.
Mr. Speaker, today we debated the motion M166 by my colleague for London Fanshawe. This motion intends to create a committee to study the implementation of a postal bank controlled by Canada Post. This is important for our regions. A postal bank would help rural regions where credit unions and points of service are disappearing. It's also so that people with low incomes can receive affordable services and for our seniors to maintain access to services. Postal banks are a solution. Will the Liberals support motion M166? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Mr. Speaker, our government has presented a new vision for Canada Post that puts services as a priority. This includes reinvesting profits for services into Canada Post, and we will certainly encourage Canada Post to broaden its partnerships in the interests of Canadians.
Member for London Fanshawe.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And postal banking does provide services to Canadians in areas the big banks have abandoned, such as Indigenous and rural communities. And it's accessible as an alternative to payday lenders who prey on low-income earners. M166, to be voted on this week, calls for a committee to study and propose the best model of postal banking under Canada Post and provide accessible banking services to all Canadians. Will the Liberals support our communities by giving them access to postal banking and vote yes to M166 this Wednesday?
Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, our new vision for Canada Post absolutely took into account the recommendations of both the House of Commons Committee recommendations and the Task Force on Canada Post, both of which made comments with respect to postal banking. We have encouraged Canada Post to look at innovations, working with unions, and I leave it in their very capable hands to make that decision.
The Honourable Member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous women and girls face unique challenges in their day-to-day life. Their rate of poverty is 3 times that of the general population. Women's groups across the country are working hard to remove barriers so all women and girls can fully reach their potential. We know that with collaboration and partnership, we create more opportunities for women and advance gender equality. Can the Minister of the Status of Women tell this House how this government is strengthening the women's movement so they can address issues impacting Indigenous women?
Honourable Minister for the Status of Women.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Long Range Mountains for her leadership and for the opportunity to update this House on 2 new ways that we're working to advance gender equality with our partners. Last Monday, I announced a new funding envelope open until December 11th. Women's organizations and Indigenous organizations advancing gender equality are invited to apply for support to enhance their capacity. The following day, Mr. Speaker, I announced a partnership with the government of Yukon worth $1.6 million to support the work of 3 women's organizations. Canadians expect us to work together, and we are.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Prior to today, James Cudmore had not been linked to the Mark Norman case by this government. But today, in their answers, the Liberals have linked him to the same. So I'm going to ask very, very bluntly, and I want a very clear answer. Was James Cudmore hired by the Minister of Defence or by the Prime Minister's office to stop him from reporting on political interference on the Davie shipbuilding contract?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the answer on this line of questioning remains the same. Prosecuting a legal proceeding on the floor of the House of Commons is inappropriate and does not align with the House of Commons compendium of procedure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Speaker, the Minister of Defence, in response to this line of questioning, said, "I know where you're going with this."
Yes, he did.
That's curious. So if the Minister knew where we were going with this, has he had discussions in his office or with the Prime Minister's office on the potential fact that he hired James Cudmore to shut him up?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, this clearly indicates why the rules of the House of Commons do not support prosecuting on the floor of the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, this would be inappropriate as this court case is currently ongoing. Thank you very much.
Député de Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles.
Mr. Speaker, day after day, we're seeing the situation getting worse for the government. We want to be able to get evidence for the defense of Admiral Norman, and we're not getting any good answer in response. And now when it comes to hires in the Department of Defense, that has nothing to do with this case, and we don't understand why they can't talk about it. My question is not, I don't want to know how, but can the Prime Minister give the documents, yes or no, to Admiral Norman?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, that question by my honourable member clearly demonstrates why we do not prosecute cases on the floor of the House of Commons. He's asking for evidence. Mr. Speaker, that is totally inappropriate, and that line of questioning remains inappropriate. Thank you.
Député de Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles.
What's inappropriate, Mr. Speaker, is to refuse a man, Admiral Mark Norman, a full and complete defense in Canada. We're simply asking for documents. We don't want to discuss the case. We want the Prime Minister to hand over documents to the defense so that he can have a full defense. We didn't talk about the case, so stop it. Will the Prime Minister hand over documents to Admiral Norman?
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, it has become quite clear that the Conservatives keep trying to indirectly prosecute this case on the floor of the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, we believe we have a judiciary and courts and the rule of law for a reason, and we will be following that process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Churchill-Kiwatinokaski.
Mr. Speaker, every day tens of thousands of temporary foreign workers work hard to contribute to our country, and yet we treat them like they're disposable. Today, 36-year-old Marie-Claire Guzman, who had a stroke, is on life support in Winnipeg. Her husband and her 14-year-old daughter are desperate to come and see her. I raised this with the minister personally last week, and yet nothing seems to have changed. In fact, one of the doctors was told that immigration said they couldn't do anything until Marie-Claire was dead. Mr. Speaker, shame on this government. Why are they being so heartless? And will they act immediately to be able to bring Ms. Guzman's family together?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from the honourable colleague, but she knows very well that I cannot get into the specific details of immigration cases because of privacy laws. I'm happy to talk to her outside the House about issues around this case, but privacy laws prevent me from going into details in front of the House.
Order. I want to encourage the member for Windsor West not to be yelling in the House and to try to restrain himself. L'honorable député de Trois-Rivières.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, last July, Greyhound announced that it would cease operations in many Canadian provinces by the end of October. While affected communities have been waiting for months for a minimum of leadership on the part of the government, the minister has decided to do, guess what? Hold parliamentary consultations less than 2 weeks before the deadline. My question is simple and direct, Mr. Speaker. What is the government planning to do to guarantee remote communities access to transportation services? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. I can assure my colleague that this government is demonstrating leadership since Greyhound announced its withdrawal by the end of October. My department's been working closely with the provinces in the West and with Ontario on measures that will replace Greyhound, and we will have updates in the future.
Le Premier ministre a dit que le budget.
The Prime Minister said that the budget would balance itself. But the annual financial report indicates that the government has increased expenditures by $20 billion. All of it was borrowed. Mr. Speaker, when will the budget balance itself? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Congratulate the member from Carleton on becoming a dad, but unfortunately, that's where the congratulations end, because this report actually confirmed that our plan is working. We have the fastest growing economy in the G7. We've created over 500,000 jobs since 2015. And Mr. Speaker, let's contrast that to the Conservatives. They relied on a plan of austerity and cuts to things like Veterans Affairs. And what did Canadians get for it? They couldn't even balance the budget.
Well, it was nice to have a moment of agreement. The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, I'd like to thank the honourable member for her congratulations on the birth of the lovely Valentina. When she was first born, she wasn't crying, and we were quite worried. And then the doctor leaned over and whispered in her ear that this Prime Minister has added $2,000 of extra debt in her name since taking her office, and she roared like a lioness, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my newest and favorite constituent, when will the budget balance itself?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad the member opposite's daughter has a similar sense of humor as him, because the fact remains that a typical Canadian family will be $2,000 better off. And with our Canada Child Benefit, we stopped sending checks to millionaires so more families can access these benefits. Our economy is growing. The Conservatives had the worst growth since the Great Depression. These are all things that confirmed in the annual financial report that our plan is working, and unfortunately the Conservatives failed when it came to the economy.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the report actually confirmed is that this government went on yet another $20 billion spending binge last fiscal year, all of it paid for by borrowed money. Now, they said the budget would be balanced, that it would balance itself next year. But instead, this Prime Minister is spending our tomorrow on his today. So the question, When will the budget balance itself?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians had a choice to continue on the Conservatives' plan of austerity and cuts and no supports to the middle class, no tax cuts to the middle class. Canadians chose differently because they saw that it wasn't working. They had the worst growth rate since the Great Depression. Instead, they chose a plan that is working. We see growth in the middle class. We're strengthening the middle class. We're lowering taxes for small businesses. We've created 500,000 good full-time jobs since 2015. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, we have one of the best balance sheets in the G7. So our plan is working and we'll continue.
The Honourable Member for Fleetwood Port Kells.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians rely on safe and reliable rail systems, and so do the constituents and businesses in our riding. From my riding in British Columbia to the province of Nova Scotia, our government is always working to improve safety on our rails and for those living near them. Could the Honourable Minister of Transport inform this House of our government's most recent initiatives regarding rail safety?
We're here. I'd like to thank the member from Fleetwood Port Kells for his excellent question and for his stellar work on the Transport Committee. You know, when railways transport goods across this country or to international destinations, they have to do so safely. That's one of the reasons why my government is accelerating the withdrawal of certain tank cars that are considered less safe for the transportation of dangerous goods. And we're retiring them years ahead of the original schedule. Canadians know that, for me, rail safety is my #1 priority, and Canadians can be sure that we will deliver.
L'honorable député de Bellechasse, Zachemin-Lévy.
Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government awarded the conversion of Asterix into a resupply ship which employed 1,500 workers at Lévis and is now the pride of the Royal Canadian Navy. But we saw it today, and it doesn't smell too good. We found out that the Liberals did everything they could to suspend this contract through blatant political interference. Why? Why are the Liberals depriving the biggest Canadian shipyard in Quebec of its fair share? Why is it not immediately awarding the conversion of the second resupply ship, Obelix?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Here. We're very thankful for the great work that Davy has done on the Asterix. It's working alongside our frigates now. We have 2 permanent joint supply ships that will also be built as part of the National Shipbuilding Strategy, Mr. Speaker, and a second interim ship is not required at this time. Thank you.
Député de Longueuil-Saint-Hubert.
Mr. Speaker, the ADISC is holding its gala in less than a week, and it summarized the situation of its cultural scene. We're risking losing everything we've built over the years. Musicians lament that YouTube and Spotify aren't required to contribute, whether it be... The Minister of Heritage says that there's no free ride, but it's easy to say because it's empty words. The Liberals have committed to falling asleep at the switch until 2024. Does he not agree that the losses happening every day justify temporary emergency measures to be implemented immediately? The Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, my colleague knows that the laws that regulate our system needs to be modernized, and that's what we're going to do with the committee of experts, with the entire team. And we are going to update our laws to go into the 21st century. If my colleague is interested in culture, why does he not ask about the $3.2 billion we've invested? Those would be worthwhile questions, because these are record-level investments. I must remind the Honourable Member Longueuil-Saint-Hubert, as he knows full well, that one must not yell in the House of Commons. Also, he may not speak when he does not have the floor. Order.
Order. The Honourable Member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, we know that in times of economic and societal change, the path to a better life for middle-class Canadians is through innovation, research, and skills development. Our government needs to empower students and entrepreneurs to turn their research into discoveries, their ideas into new technologies, and their skills into good jobs. Can the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development tell the House about the steps the government is taking to build on Canada's strength and unleash a new wave of startup innovation in this great country?
Good question. Good Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Sault Ste. Marie for that very important intervention. As the member full well knows, our #1 priority is economic growth and job creation for future generations. Absolutely. So my daughters Nanki and Kirpa can reap the benefits from the investments that we're making. That's why we invested in CDL. This particular investment will help the startup ecosystem across Canada, and this investment will support 1,300 science-based ventures, which will help create 22,000 good quality middle-class jobs.
Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, the government has instituted a policy of requiring the groups applying for the Canada Summer Jobs program to submit to a values test as part of their application. Did the government use that values test as part of their evaluation of the application for funds from the Soft on Anti-Semitism UNRWA before they gave them $50 million?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, we expect that when employers apply to hire a summer student through the Canada Summer Jobs Program, that they respect the laws and the rights established in this country. Mr. Speaker, we have an obligation as the Government of Canada to ensure those rights are upheld, and we'll do exactly that. Thank you.
Honorable député de Montcalm.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, Saudi Arabia murders reporters. Saudi Arabia whips bloggers. Saudi Arabia kills civilians in Yemen. Saudi Arabia lies to the entire world. How many Badawis, Khashoggis, women and children still have to die? When will the Prime Minister finally decide to cancel contracts to sell arms to this murderous regime? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, we condemn the murder of Khashoggi. The explanations provided by Saudi Arabia lack coherence and credibility. We continue to ask that an in-depth investigation be led in cooperation with Turkish authorities. Those responsible for this murder must be held responsible for their actions and face justice. Mr. Speaker, thanks to a dubious financial arrangement, Chrysler received a gift of $2.6 billion that it won't have to repay, while they made a profit of $4.3 billion last year, and the government is fine with that. Ottawa is rich enough to give up $500 million of Quebecers' money. But Ottawa is not rich enough for our dairy farmers who are waiting for compensation. Not rich enough to ensure that Davie can put its people to work. Not rich enough to do its part in health transfers. Why does Ottawa have money for everyone except for Quebec? The Minister of International Trade.
Conservatives chose to bail out Chrysler in 2009. They had no intention of ever recovering the loan. The deal the Conservatives made actually approved 100% of the loss at the exact time that they handed out the bailout money. Our government exhausted all possibilities for recovery from old Chrysler.
L'honorable député de Beauce.
Once again today, Canadians are being denied postal services because of a labor dispute. Postal monopolies have been abolished everywhere in Europe since 2013. Opening to competition and privatization are the keys to reducing costs, improving service, and ensuring that Canadians are never again denied postal services during a labor dispute. When will the government get rid of this antiquated monopoly?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Our government firmly believes in the collective bargaining process because we know that when parties work out a deal themselves, that deal is in the best interest of both parties. I've been working closely with the Minister of Procurement, and we're monitoring the impact of the labour disruption. I have spoke with both members, both the employer and the union this morning, and we encourage them to continue to negotiate and look for the deal. Thank you.
Tabling of documents. Order. I encourage members to take their conversations into the lobbies. Thank colleagues for their assistance. Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36, Bracket 8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 5 petitions.
Hear, hear. Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Présentation de rapport de comité. Honorable député du Yukon.
Presenting reports from committees, the Honourable Member for the Yukon.
Both official languages, 72nd report of the Standing Committee of Procedure and House Affairs in relation to Bill C-76, an act to amend the Canada elections and other action to make certain consequential amendments. The committee has studied the bill and has decided to report the bill back to the House with amendments. Mr. Speaker, as you can understand, this project with over 400 clauses